SMEs, tomorrow manufacturing, and then you find that this cannot even be effective. The key thing is that as long as you have almost 100 naira gap between the official rate of around 307 and now the black market rate is also now climbing up again, is above 400. Once you have that gap, you necessarily, even without intending to do so, you fuel corruption and inefficient allocation. You find that at the end of the day, you intend to give $20,000 per quarter to SMEs. You end up selling billions of dollars with only about 1/10 of, just much less than half of that getting to the real people it's intended for. So while the purpose is clear, the purpose is well intended, the purpose is geared towards helping the economy, you find that with the rigidities and inefficiencies created in the system, you don't achieve that purpose. That's where the problem lies.
Mr. Ademuze, you will agree with me that before now, the Central Bank of Nigeria had come up with policies to try to encourage other players to come into the market. And what did we find? We found a lot of speculating, we had found a lot of round tripping, and we found a lot of corruption in this particular
Harriet, don't forget
system.
that we're speaking about this issue a lot on this, in this studio. When that policy came up sometime in June last year, we hailed it because we were told there was going to be floating of this currency. And Central Bank had insisted at that time that they were not going to be a major player in that market, that they were only going to come in once in a while to intervene in the market. But soon after, we found that the Central Bank of Nigeria remained the sole supplier of dollar, even though in the OTC, in the FMDQ OTC market, for foreign exchange. So that has been the problem. They found that, and once you have this pegging or, managed, or how do I put it now, dominantly managed FX policy, you drive away, for investors. Okay. You drive away foreign direct investment. You drive away other sources of inflow. The autonomous sources have all gone. The FDIs and FPIs have all gone. And then that is where the problem is. Until we encourage these guys to come back, the foreign direct investors, the portfolio investors, and every other source of foreign exchange, the autonomous sources, the MTOs, money transfer operators, even Nigerians who are abroad, to have the confidence to bring in their money. If I live abroad and I bring in dollar into this economy and you pay me at 307 or 320 or whatever, when I know that my family I'm sending that money to can ordinarily go to the street and get 4 something or 5 something, I won't send that money. Okay, so now let me ask you this question. Do you think that the Naira is overvalued or undervalued? At what rate now? At the rate that we have it at 306 Naira, 10 kobo, as at close of trade yesterday. 306? 306 Naira, 10 kobo, at the close of trade at the Interbank Foreign Exchange Market. And at the parallel market, we have it at 410 Naira. Much as I agree that there's a lot of speculation going on, which until we bust, we cannot get the actual value of our currency. That's the price discovery can never happen under this atmosphere. But it will seem to me that, based on what's going on right now, 306 is not the actual value of our, But that's what the market is pricing it at. But what's happening in the other markets? When you have multiple markets, we have, the BDC market, the black market, the government market. Once you have those multiple markets, you can never say that this is the price of the currency. And if you use the lowest one, 306, you'll be fooling yourself. So Naira can even be stronger than 306, but we cannot find out until we bust the whole bubble and then allow the whole. Now, what CBN is doing right now, which appears a bit palliative, a bit helpful in the short term, is that they have proven there is so much speculation going on. Because once they're able to show that there's, we are confident that we will intervene, in the near term, and they make that statement and they keep pushing in money, you see that people actually begin to panic and sell off all the dollars they stored, somewhere that they don't have any need for. But the hawks are always patient, waiting. When you get tired, and you always will, this country is overburdened with a lot of issues. Infrastructure gap, corruption, issues, funding of our budget deficit, and then the little we are getting from the improvement in oil price, the revenue that we're seeing now, we are using it to intervene. Instead of directing that energy towards the gaps we have in this economy. You just spoke about power, a while ago. It's still a big problem. But many Nigerians live in darkness as we speak right now. They're also benefiting from it because you have to realize that the Central Bank of Nigeria, selling on the interbank, caters to BTA, PTA, and other invincibles. Now, let's even look at that, Harriet. Your preference in an economy that is dying that's in recession is to sell money to those who are going abroad, to sell money to those who are leaving our universities here to go and study abroad, to sell money to people who are going for medical trips abroad. But is that what an economy is encouraging?
Those are genuine demands. And those are demands that the Central Bank of Nigeria has continued to say, okay, look, we're going to subsidize. It is not, you don't get it at so much at least. You just get about 4,000 or thereabout.
My argument is that should a receding economy, a failing economy, be encouraging foreign demonstration effect? Should we be encouraging people traveling to India and America and elsewhere to seek for medical attention when we have plenty of hospitals here we can modernize? We can, the gap, the loss we're making in this intervention, we can use it to equip 1 or 2 hospitals and make them international standard.
But if
and then
they can
cut
afford
those wastages we use in traveling
I'm
abroad.
not holding brief for anybody here, but just for us to understand that if you can afford it, then you pay for it. And if the Central Bank of Nigeria cannot afford to give them,
at our expense.
So that's
not at a subsidized rate.
If the Central Bank of Nigeria feels that it cannot subsidize, it cannot give to PTA or BTA as the case may be, the Central Bank will tell you, the individual or the corporate as the case may be, that we cannot afford to fund this. But can you look for autonomous means of getting the dollars that you need to fund the account?
But we're funding them right now through the banks. That's actually what.
But it is still it's still not enough, because they still complain that they still have to go to the autonomous sources.
Nothing is ever enough.
Streets.
The one to the SME will never be enough. Let me tell you, Harriet, the real manufacturers who are holding this economy on their shoulders, who are creating the employment that's holding us at it means that the structured companies, the blue chip companies are still finding it very difficult to access foreign exchange at this point. I don't want to call names here, but the big companies that employ thousands of Nigerians, as if they are making losses. I've seen companies that were making billions of naira profit in the past years. In the past 1 or 2 years, are making losses now. They're almost falling on their knees. And you find that as long as these requests delay for 3 months, people are still queuing up in their LCs, what do you call it? The letter of credit request. Bills for collection, all the value for FX transactions. People have made requests in the past 3-4 months and they haven't got, and CBN, Central Bank is giving them in trickles. And when you lengthen this process, it hurts these businesses and they eventually make losses and they close down. Because the longer you hold them forth, the longer their asset conversion cycle, the more interest they incur on loans taken from banks, the longer it takes them to realize their, the production and sell, and then the more likely they will make losses, and job losses will also occur. So we are not helping the economy by continuing this, pegging. And of course, even the IMF has warned us. The World Bank is still waiting for us to do the right thing before we can get the $1.4 billion we are requesting, even though our bond sale has been successful and we appear not to be very eager to borrow now. But the point is that CBN may mean well by trying to show that this whole devilish hands holding our currency from discovering its price, they want to break those hands. But the approach to it is just a short-term palliative which will have a long-term adverse effect on the economy. So I advise that we better face the reality and administer the real floating. Well, CBN will still manage the float, but not as much as we're doing now. Let's create a policy that will show everyone around the world that we are transparent about the pricing of our currency so that we can allow foreign investors to play here and allow free flow of foreign exchange, both inwards and outwards. But for now, as long as central bank continues to depend, and the key issue here again is that there's a high risk of dependency on oil. We are very vulnerable. We're still a very vulnerable nation. Because we saw a little rally on oil price, we felt we can have the war chest to say we can defend the currency now. For how long can we do that? Of course, the oil has danced up and also dancing a bit up and down now. We have had some stability at in the Niger Delta region, but any little obstruction, any little disruption would send us back to a worse situation that we came from before this intervention. We might see the dollar trade at beyond 500 naira again, or even worse than that, if we don't take the right actions now. Let's float this thing and curb this whole illegality this whole bad behavior, this whole special allocation. If you're a friend of the central bank or presidency, you have your way, now you get this thing and then you stop.
No, that's why. That's
100 naira gap, it's a horrible
you also have to realize that a lot of people are complicit in this. And as we wrap up this conversation, I'd really like for you, because it seems as if you've taken a particular stance, and then the Central Bank of Nigeria also has its own stand. It is determined to ensure that there's liquidity in the system and at least focus on those key sectors, which we've already mentioned. But in the very short term and in the medium term, because for all intents and purposes, that's where we're going towards, medium and then long term, of course, should the Central Bank of Nigeria do anything else from what it's doing at the moment? They should.
The only way to restore liquidity is to allow several sources inflow dollar into the economy. Central Bank of Nigeria cannot and would never be able to, in our circumstances, continue to make the defense. It is at the opportunity cost of that is very huge and very bad for the economy. All
right, Mr. Odemezu, we will have to anchor the conversation here, but I'm very sure that we'll revisit this issue again in the not-too-distant future.
Always my pleasure.
Orji Odemezu is a financial consultant and Chief Executive Officer of Flame Academy. Business Morning continues after now. Stay with us.